what I wanted to show you guys are just techniques on how to attach it to create a nice and smooth surface. Because watch what happens when you lay your fronts together. They do not align. And this could be a big problem. So a trick that I like to do is I notch the heck out of the curves. So I just put notches everywhere. I use my edges to sorry, to align myself and my notches. So I'm gonna actually clip it because clipping helps me see through the other side. So I just like to clip like, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch. Not all the way through to the seam allowance, a stitch line. But this way I can line up my notches. Line up with your notches and pin it. You will be using a lot of pins into place. But watch what happens when I pin it. I still have this edge that is a lot smaller than this edge. So it's still gonna be really hard. Even if you pin everything, you go to sew it, we still need to treat this seam allowance somehow. So 2 tricks that you can do is to do a basting stitch on the curve that is the biggest curve, the biggest length. So that'll be the curve that's convex. You will do your basting stitch that is within the stitch line. I'll draw my stitch line right now so you guys can see. My stitch line is 1/2 of an inch. So my stitch line is just gonna be within the curviest part. I don't have to go all the way over. Within the curviest part here, I'm gonna do a stitch that is size 5. I'm gonna go all the way inside the stitch edge. So we have my stitch line here. I'm gonna stitch 2 rows right next to it on the inside. When it's a bigger stitch, it's gonna go faster, so be very careful. And you're working with the curve too, so you gotta be extra careful. I'm just gonna go up until the notch, in between the notches. Pull that out. And do a second stitch. A second stitch is just to kind of help stabilize the gathering that you're gonna do. If you have one, it's not that nice to pull.
Can I just mention,
Yeah.
Dee Dee's pulling the thread underneath the foot, and that'll be, it's good to do that so you don't lose your thread.
Yes, a good habit to get into is also just making sure your threads go behind here. If it's all in the front and you're stitching and it gets caught up in the front here, it's probably gonna loop within itself. So yeah, I forgot to mention it. Always get in the habit of pulling it back so you don't overstitch it. The distance doesn't have to be too wide. I'm just giving it a 1/8 of an inch distance from the other stitch line. Okay. So now you can pull it, and what you're doing is you're manually shrinking your edge. This is where I would also recommend going to the iron, because what heat does is it actually changes the chemistry of the fabric. So it will kind of like the heat that you apply to it will kind of, how do I say it, like
It shapes it, right?
shapes it into place, kind of like stabilizes it, like it I that's the word I'm thinking of. What's the word I'm thinking? I'm totally blanking out on the word, but the heat application will kind of help hold its shape. So this is where I would encourage you to go to the iron, pull it just a little bit to shrink it in size. You don't have to go all the way, you don't have to go crazy. So that when you line it up, in between the notches, let me see, it's this way. Yeah, so in between the notches now, approximately the same length. So the gathering kind of helps shrink this part so that it's easier to sew when you're going under. For you guys, please go to the iron and iron it. I'm not gonna go. I'm just gonna stay here and I'm going to pin it in place. So another tip about pinning edges that are not the same length is always pin so that the stitch line is aligned. The stitch line, if you can imagine, is a half of an inch in and half of an inch in. So the actual edge does not need to line up, but you want the stitch line to be lined up here. So that's just a tip. Pin your notches in place. Pin your edge in place. And then all in between, do as many pins as you need. Kind of move your thread around. Do as many pins as you need to hold these two layers together. Because when you start stitching here, you'll notice it starts to shift around because of the gathers. So just use as many pins, put it in place. And now I think I'm ready to sew. So I usually like to sew with the gather part facing me so that I can kind of control where the gathers are gonna fold. If it's underneath, I can't really see and I can't really control. Like if I see that it's starting to pucker, I mean, I won't be able to see that it's starting to pucker this way, but with here, I can see when it starts to pucker and I can go in, stop my machine, and just kind of rub it into place so that it's nice and smooth. So I usually like to stitch with the gather part facing towards me. All right. Now, when we're stitching, we're doing the seam allowance, half of an inch. I'm just using the guide, but feel free to draw the seam line if you need. And stitch. The goal, the stitch length needs to go back because that was really big. Back stitch. The goal is to try to not have any pleat or puckering that happens on the seam. So slowly go, and this is one where you have to be very careful. Slowly go. Remove your pins so you're not breaking needles here. Very slowly. Go through. And if I start to notice that it's starting to gather, I'll just use my fingers, rub it in place. Oops. You'll find that you'll use the hand crank quite a bit for this type of stitching that requires you to use your fingers. Very carefully move all your threads out of place. Let's look at let's scan our seam. So, looks like there's no puckering. Open it up. And it's not too bad. But we will need to treat the seam allowance. And by treating, what we're doing is just clipping it. Clip it so that you can open up the seam allowance and press it nicely into place. Because with curves, I don't know if you guys noticed, but when I try to open it up, this edge is not folding over, right? So you just want to clip it to allow it to open up. And this is part of the rubric too, actually. The grading criteria is that you're treating your seam allowances for the curves so that when you open it, when you iron it, it lays nice and flat.
So you trimmed before you sewed as well? Was that just the notches that you cut?
I just trimmed the notches. I just clipped the notches. And the notches are only for me so that I could actually visually see it. But if you don't like clipping it before, you just use your markings to tell you. All right, this looks pretty good. Now all I gotta do is just go to the iron, press it open, press it nice and neat. Again, I'll do that last. But I'm gonna move on to the next part now, okay? I'm gonna try to do this quickly so you guys get a chance to practice.